Yeah. So this is me, bitch ass mofo. It's like 2:30 a.m. where I am. But I just finished watching the Barry finale just now, and it's one of my favorite shows of all time. And I thought I would just like share my initial thoughts, like 20 minutes since I finished it, and I had a bit of time to process now. So, spoiler warning: this is spoiling the final episode of Barry, one of the greatest shows ever made, in my opinion, that I've seen. Very pretty light watch too. 20 to 30 minute episodes, 4 seasons. Could bang most of that out in like 2 or 3 days if you're really binging. So please go watch it. So I'm just gonna go through every character and talk about where their character arcs kind of ended up and how I feel about it. So first of all, let's get the obvious one out of the way. Barry. Kind of figured he was gonna die. Did not expect him to die like that. The most shocking thing about that scene for me was he was actually willing to take responsibility for his actions, which, like, classic in the style of this show, the writing of this show. Like, the second he decides he's ready to finally accept responsibility for his actions is the second that he dies. It's such a classic Barry move, and it really was a gut punch because I'm like, holy shit, he's actually doing it. He's actually going to turn himself in after all the pressure that was applied to him, after he tried to bullshit it with the God stuff, like, that's not God's plan for me. He was ready to accept it, and that's when Gene fucked himself, and that's when we could talk about Gene. So there was no good ending for Gene, right? He was either gonna die or he was going to get everything pinned on him. And in that moment where Barry was ready to turn himself in, it seemed like, oh, well, this is also a way out for Gene, because if Barry turns himself in, that absolves Gene of all the guilt, because Barry's going to confess to all the crimes that he fucking committed. But Gene, in this act of just revenge and anger, it's a very Barry move that Gene did, isn't it? He was only thinking about the short term, what the person he wanted to kill. He was seeing red, and he didn't think about, like, the repercussions of this later. This is exactly what happened when Barry killed Janice, and that's when everything really started spiraling out of control in his life. It's the same for Gene here. He wasn't thinking beyond just, I have to kill this guy. Well, with Barry killing Janice, it was a little bit more calculated, but it was pretty clear that he didn't have a long-term plan beyond just Janice has to die before she finds out. With Gene, it's just Barry has to die because all these people believe all this bad shit about me, and Barry is, well, he's not even directly responsible, is the thing. Gene's character arc is like one of my favorite in the whole show. Such a complex character. I don't know how to feel about where he ends. It's really frustrating when he regresses back to the person he was. As soon as the bullshit Asian guy started talking about Daniel Day-Lewis and all this shit, just seeing the acting from, oh my goodness, I forgot the actor's name. I'm not going to look it up right now. It's too late. But, oh my fucking God, dude. Just the way his eyes just light up and his face just subtly changes as you just see those gears turning. He's ready to drop the whole Justice for Janice movement at the drop of a fucking dime. As soon as it seems like he's going to get a big budget movie with big name actors, and then he starts bullshitting them about, oh, Barry's a sympathetic guy. Oh my God. What an amazing character arc. What a tragic character arc. Because Gene's like not a flawless or, completely innocent. When we meet him in the beginning of the series, we find out about all the terrible shit he did in the 80s and how he got basically excommunicated from Hollywood. But he didn't deserve this, man. He did not deserve this, and a lot of it is his fault. Like, let's not pin it all on Barry. Obviously, Barry is the main trigger for a lot of it, but let's not pin it all on Barry. So Gene, I thought he ended in a good spot. Well, not for him, but in an interesting spot. Let's see. Fuchs. Oh my God. They took Fuchs's character in a direction I never could have seen fucking coming. Like, it was so wild. He really embraced this Raven persona, and at first I thought, oh, excuse me. First I thought it was gonna be used for some kind of like weird gag or something. And it was gonna drop at like a really inopportune time in classic Fuchs fashion, but no, he actually is just kind of a badass now. And he's also, I like the idea that he just embraces what he is. I like the idea that he's not a bullshitter anymore, because that's what Fuchs is at his core up to this point in the series, a bullshitter. He bullshits everybody he talks to. He talks his way out of situations that, oh man, and they took his character in such an interesting direction. And that final scene between him and Hank, where they just lay into each other and just tell each other exactly what the other person is and lay it out in no uncertain terms so that they understand. That's an amazing fucking scene, man. That's like probably top 3 scenes in the entire fucking show. One of the most well-acted scenes in anything I've ever seen by both actors. It was incredible. Just like not just like the way they delivered the lines, but like the subtle ways they're, oh my God. So I guess that segues perfectly into talking about Hank. Oh my God. Nobody expected. You have to remember something about Hank. If you didn't know this, I think most people who watch this don't know this, but Hank was supposed to die in episode 1, you know? The only reason he stuck around is because people had a really good reception to him when they were writing the show. So they're like, well, let's write him into a few more episodes and see where it goes. Purely comedy relief character turned into arguably the 3rd most important character in the entire show. And just this amazingly written, tragic character. There was none of the normal humor from Hank, you know, because Anthony Carrigan is so good at Hank because he's so fucking funny when he needs to be. He brings levity to every situation he's in. But for season 4, they played Hank mostly straight. I mean, he still has some amazing comedy scenes, like the Dave and Buster's scene. And then I love the scene after he shoots the rocket at Fuchs's house and he ends up in the lady and he has to run away. And he ends up at the lady's house and he gets picked up. It's so fucking funny. But there was absolutely none of that in this episode. And we see a completely different side to Anthony Carrigan's acting. One that we only got a glimpse at in the hourglass, the sand tomb episode where he kills those guys with the fucking sand, which was brutal. And then, of course, the scene between him and Cristobal, again, another top, like, best acted scene in the entire show. And we see him bring that energy now here for an entire episode, pretty much nonstop, just in that space and acting it wonderfully. And I can't wait to see what he does after this show. Because Hank is just such a perfect, tragic character. Just this funny and optimistic guy. He has that traumatic experience at the end of season 3. And like, it changes him. It changes his entire worldview. He just accepts that you have to be brutal to make it in this business. Because up to that point, other than a brief moment in season 2 where he was going serious mode and like tried to kill Barry, 50-50 with the come on. That scene's legendary. But other than that, he's mostly just trying to be nice guy. There's the bus scene where he's like, yeah, I'm whatever at heart. I forgot the phrase he used. Something fucking stupid but funny at the same time. Classic for this show. But basically, he's a nice guy. Well, it's not until he has that experience at the end of season 3 where he has to rescue Cristobal that he accepts, no, you can't just be a nice guy. You gotta be a little ruthless. And he's a little ruthless. And then he's a lot ruthless. And then he just makes that a core facet of his personality. And he betrays the man he loves the most in this world, more than himself, more than anyone, and gets him killed in the process. And now he tries to live for these last 8 years, just forgetting about that pain, forgetting about the monster he became, and how Cristobal paid for his sins. And here's Fuchs just fucking saying it over and over. You killed Cristobal, admit you killed Cristobal. And just the scene where he lays into Hank. Oh my God, that was brutal. That was hard to watch because I absolutely love Hank. He's a monster like most of the other characters on the show, honestly, but I love him. And I felt like, I'm not going to say he didn't entirely deserve it, but Jesus, what a tragic ending for his character. I honestly thought he died in the initial shootout and they just killed him off. Just like that, because he looked pretty lifeless. But then I noticed he was still breathing a little bit. And then they give him that proper send-off scene where he's grasping at the statue hand, which is just sat in a whole other way. All right, who's left? Sally is another character that it's hard not to have complex feelings about, because she is just a horrible and selfish person to her core, but such an amazingly written and compelling character and amazingly acted. that it's just so hard not to kind of root for her, even though I genuinely can't stand her as a person and think she's a terrible mother. With Sally, there's really two main things to talk about for her conclusion. The confession scene with John, which is, again, like, the acting was just unreal in this fucking episode and in the show in general. And it's like, for most of the show, they've been bringing this amazing energy for the comedy. The comedy's always been at the center of a lot of the best moments of the show. That's not to say there was never any drama, and the drama was good when it showed up. But this was just basically played completely straight with a few exceptions for the entire episode, and everybody knocked it out of the fucking park. And that scene where she just confesses her sins to John, tells him everything, and just basically admits, like, yeah, your father and I are fucking monsters, but unlike Barry, she can't live with the guilt. And remember, she only ever killed the one guy, and that's enough to destroy her soul with guilt and eat her alive and keep her awake at night. She still has those flashbacks, those nightmares. I think it's fair to say that whole invasion scene in back in wherever the fuck in the Midwest their house was, that was all a nightmare sequence, because she still has PTSD just from killing the one guy. She still feels guilty just from killing the one guy. Barry has killed many and does not feel a twinge of guilt. Again, why it's so shocking the way Barry's story ended, not just how suddenly he was just iced, but also the way that the fact that he actually felt a little bit guilty. So let's talk about that ending with Barry a little more, because I think I finally understand why it is that Barry finally was ready to turn himself in after everything. It's the way that what's the fat guy's name? Gene's agent. First of all, we got to talk about how he was ready to leave Gene right then and there. The suitcase packed up. Oh my god, that was fucking hysterical, bro. I'm sorry. Talking about, oh, I'll be right back. What a snake. You're not alone. What a snake, bro. What a snake. Oh my god. And then, and after his talk with Barry is finally ready to turn himself in. And I think the reason is because somebody looked at him. First of all, he had to accept that Sally and John left him, and it wasn't going to be easy to find them. And they purposely did that. They made themselves, well, Sally did that. John probably protested, but Sally made it hard for him to find them easily because he's a fucking monster. And it's like, he has to reflect on that now that they're not here. He has to objectively look at himself. That's number one. Number two is the fact that he says the phrase, there's someone only you can save. And you gotta remember, Barry's identity up to this point has always been, well, according to himself, the guy who helps people out. Whenever somebody asks him, what are you? He'll answer with something to the effect of, I'm a good guy, I help people out. He even repeats it over and over in the first half of season 4. Almost to convince himself. So this is his chance. He can save somebody that only he can save. And not just anybody, but somebody that he loved at one point, and probably still has love in his heart for, and thought of as like a father figure, Gene. You know, regardless of these complex feelings he has about Gene now, Gene is going to go away for shit he did, and only he can save him. And that, combined with the fact that his family left him because of his monstrousness, just caused him to objectively reflect on his actions and have that moment of clarity and realize he has to turn himself in, which of course, yep, that's exactly the perfect moment to just ice him, because yeah, you don't get to, man. You're a monster. You're a selfish piece of shit. I absolutely love him as a character, but what a just epitome of self-centeredness. And it's too little too late. You know, it's good that he has that moment of clarity and is finally ready to change, ready to turn himself in. But we've seen it happen before, and he always regresses. So even then, I wouldn't say I was convinced by it. So anyway, long tangent away from Sally. That confession scene was just incredible. We got to finally, she dropped the mask, you know. She was always like wearing a mask whenever she talked to anybody, especially her son. Never got the feeling that she was being genuine around her son. And here she just gets to talk frankly to him. And talk about how she feels like she's a bad person and just the guilt is eating her alive. Can't say the same for Barry. So that's the first scene. And the second important scene to talk about with Sally is after the time jump, when she's become the high school theater teacher. And her final conversation with John, her final conversation of the show, And it's pretty clear that he has so much love in his heart for her mother, but she's not returning it in kind. As a matter of fact, she's regressed. That's the main theme of season 4, in my opinion, is characters that got development in previous seasons regressed. Gene changed a lot, but he regressed in the end, went back to his old self-centered ways, and it led to his downfall, led to him getting lured into this trap by Jim Moss and all of them. Barry, I mean, we don't even need to talk about Barry character regression. That's a whole different fucking video. The way he constantly develops and then undevelops and regresses. You know, Hank, Hank's development, negative development, is like, again, a whole other long rant video. This one's already much longer than I intended it to be. What was I talking about? I got so far off topic, but anyway. So Sally, we see she's regressed. She's back to being this egocentric, self-centered, just person who's only concerned with the play being good. The high school theater production, mind you. So it's not even like it's that serious, but she is just desperate to get recognition from anyone that will give it to her. That's always been at the core of her character. That's why when Joplin failed, it was so fucking frustrating for her, because she was finally getting the recognition she wanted, and then boop, gone in a second. So she needs this show to be good. But the thing is, when she's talking to her son, who tells her he loves her, I mean, I got the sense that she's never said I love you to this kid in his entire, what is he, like 13, 14-year-old life. In that scene, I got the impression that she never said I love you to this kid. That's the vibe I got. Because he was saying shit like, I love you, Mom. And like, clearly, like, he's not going to go to his friend's house without her permission and all this shit. And she's just, the last thing she says to him after he told her he loves her and he's going to sleep over his friend's house, which she barely has a reaction to. She's not concerned for him at all. You know, you got like helicopter parents who won't let their kids have sleepovers. She's the opposite. She shows no concern for him at all after he says, yeah, let me just go hang out at this random kid's house. And then the last thing she says to him before she drives away for the night is, was it good? That's at the forefront of her mind when she's talking to her son. She only really cares about how he felt about the play. So Sally, like, again, worthy of her own fucking video. And I think that the very, like, if the show gets the recognition it deserves, we're going to see a lot more character breakdowns now that we got the full series, because there's just so much to talk about with every character. Like, I'm already at almost 20 minutes. I need to go. I have work tomorrow. I need to go to sleep. But there's just too much to talk about. Okay, so I think the last thing I want to talk about is, of course, the last scene and just the mind fuckiness of the Barry movie turned Kusanao movie, which as soon as first of all, I realized what they were going to do from the title. I mean, it's pretty obvious, to be fair. And it was just so funny and sad at the same time. And my only thought at the end of it was, even in death, this man Barry found a way to not take responsibility for any of his fucking actions. Is that not crazy? Even in death, he shifted the blame to Kusano, and now they spun this whole crazy ass narrative. There's some obvious social commentary here about how these, like, based off a true story type movies are, like, rarely, like, only loosely seated in facts and, like, mostly completely fictitious. But the important thing about the final scene for me and the Barry movie turned Kusano movie is John's reaction. Because he had a strong emotional reaction to that movie. He was choking up. First of all, there were some clear signs of PTSD when the action scenes were happening. Because, like, we saw, oh my God, that shootout scene. That's one of the best shootout scenes I think I've ever seen. Because we don't actually get that much of the shootout. Just the fucking aftermath. Imagine being, like, he can't be older than 8. So he's like 7 or 8. At the oldest, seeing a scene like that. We have people gussing out, people with their limbs blown off, dead and dying. That's traumatizing. That's so real. And then in the movie, they just show up and fictionalize it and make it this fun, poppy, just, you know, dude, how do you, I mean, it is, Barry Universe has always been heightened reality, but how you can have, like, a pop culture like action movie about a recent string of serial murders. Like this would be like this would be like if they took like a recent school shooter and made them like a real person and made them into like a fun action movie, and then people actually like saw it and it was received well, which I feel like, you know what, I wouldn't put anything beyond today's society. But anyway, I'm getting way off track again. I gotta wrap this fucking video up. It's already 20 minutes. But John is eating it the fuck up, bro. He is getting choked up. He's having strong reactions to that ending scene where they honor his father. And you gotta remember, John is the ultimate victim in all this. He loved and respected his father. He believed every word of everything Barry said to him. He never doubted his dad was a good person until the moment Sally told it to his face. And back then, he was too young to understand. He was probably too young to understand the implications of what Sally was saying to him. And now, Barry's dead. And we never see him grieve, but we know that that devastated him. Because we saw the kind of relationship they had prior to Barry's death. So Barry's dead, and now here comes the media spinning this crazy ass story about Gene being the mastermind behind it all. And even if Sally said to him, yeah, that's just a lot of bullshit, which is probably why she didn't want him to watch the movie, because it's just a lot of bullshit, and it was probably deeply upsetting for her as well when she saw it. He believed every word of it. He just couldn't accept at his core that his father was this monster that Sally told him that he was. And it makes total sense because you're 7 or 8 years old. You got a father that you love and worship. And he's actually not the person you thought he was, but you just can't bring yourself to accept it. And then he's dead. You know, by the time Barry's dead, John is way too young to just process the like real implications of everything Barry did. So ultimately, I have some conflicting feelings about the finale, but it's definitely thought-provoking. Like, I think every single character ended their story in an interesting way that's worthy of analysis. Every single important character ended their story in a way that's worthy of analysis. The only big loose end for me that's left is Albert, because where the fuck is Albert? This is not just a small like, oh well, he was just supposed to be a season 3 only character. Like, no, bro. This guy knows the whole truth about everything Barry did. He caught Barry in the act, being a hitman and burying well, that was actually the man Sally killed, but Albert had no way of knowing that. And Barry just breaking down in that scene and crying and doubling over is basically an acknowledgement that everything Albert was accusing him of was true. You know, killing Chris and all these people. So, where is help? That's the one big loose end for me. And that's basically when the credits were rolling, I'm like, so wait, he let them make this whole bullshit movie, didn't come forward and tell them the truth. Maybe it was kind of one of those like, there's no need to disgrace the dead situations. Like, he's already dead and he was Barry's best friend in life, so let's not disgrace his memory further. But other than that, man, what a crazy fucking season. Very different vibe than the first 3. I mean, my favorite seasons are always going to be 1 and 2, just because I love that like blend of comedy and drama combined with like the fun action that they had. And season 3 is also amazing. It has some of the best scenes of the show. They got the highway chase scene and a lot of the funny fucking scenes, like the "what did you put in the sauce" scene is a personal favorite of mine. It's just cracking me up even thinking about it. But this was an amazing season, and okay. And there's one thing, the last thing I'll say to wrap it up. Regardless of how you feel about the finale and the final season in general, it's not my favorite season of the show, but it's definitely amazing. And the acting was on such a different level in this season. I feel like everybody was bringing their triple plus game for real. So no matter how you feel about it, we can all agree, nobody thought the show was going to go in this direction after episode 1. If you watched the first season and you told me, oh yeah, I know exactly how this is going to end, and then you watch the final season and you're like, yep, just how I thought it would go, you're fucking lying. So Bill Hader took us on a wild ride with this show, and it was fun. Okay, it was fun every step of the way, and I love this show. And I think I'm gonna rewatch it like pretty much right away because I just need to see the whole run from season 1 to 4. Because I watched it for the first time last year, so those first 3 seasons aren't as fresh in my mind. And I just need to watch season 4 with the context of the other seasons fresh in my mind because the vibe was just so different that I feel like it's important to go into it with that context. So yeah, this is a rant type of video. I didn't mean for it to be this long. I don't know if anybody's going to watch this or care, but I don't really mind either way. I just want to get my thoughts out there. And if you guys have more interest in these kinds of videos, maybe more scripted and less ranty, maybe I'll eventually try and put some effort and make more of them because it's really easy for me to talk about shows I like this. Like, I'm a writer by trade. I think about these kind of things a lot, even when I really shouldn't be. So it's easy for me to just put my thoughts out there in like an unscripted format or even scripted format like this. So if anybody made it this far, first of all, I don't know how you managed. Second of all, let me know if you want to see more like this one because it was fun to rant about it for 26 fucking minutes. Jesus. And I could easily keep going, but I got to cut it off here. So yeah, thanks for watching. And if you watched this whole video and you haven't seen Barry, first of all, the fuck, man. You just spoiled the shit out of the fucking final season for yourself. But please watch it. It's such a great show. All right. That's all for me. Have a good night, everybody. I am so fucking tired. Ugh, why did I make it so long? Oops.